Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of the Esports Inquirer podcast. I am Joseph Shea, and I am joined here today by TJ. TJ, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Doing great. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, it is nice to finally get this thing started. We have a special guest in a little bit. But first, I do want to talk about that interview that we had. I committed a cardinal sin of production since that day. I not only did I swap out my glasses for contacts, but I made one of the biggest, most frequent mistakes I think that you feel like an idiot for, which is I got a haircut. So, despite putting on the same shirt today, I look nothing like I looked in that interview, which is fantastic and great for continuity. But despite that, I think we're going to be all right. We'll keep the focus on esports here and not on my beautiful face. We are going to kick it off by talking about Apex Legends. But before we do that, I want to get some introductions going. So, TJ, I know you as the guy who has been top rank in just about every fighting game that's ever existed. I think that changes from week to week, the game
Yeah.
that you're playing. I don't know if I've ever seen you stick to a game for more than a week, but
Oh yeah.
so what have you been working on lately though?
So these past couple of weeks, I've been playing a little bit of Tekken here, a little bit of Street Fighter there, but those have been my main games. I've dabbled in a little Guilty Gear, but mainly been focusing on the two big names right now in the scene.
That's good. That's good. I know everybody wants, and by everybody I mean a very specific group of players would like Mortal Kombat to also be known as one of those big dogs, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna happen. There's a community for it out there, and it seems like they kind of just are gonna stick to themselves for a while. So.
It does cater more towards the casual audience, but yeah, they're serious nonetheless.
Oh, definitely. I mean, they can do things in that game that I couldn't imagine doing in any of the ones that I've tried. So, fighting games are not my thing. As you know, TJ and I have been to a few Smash tournaments together, and those have never ended with me placing higher than him. Except I think maybe one time in college, I think I placed in top 4 in a tournament. And that would be the only time, and I'm sure that was just a matter of bracket luck there. So, but I'm not a fighting game a special. How do you say aficionado? What am I thinking of? Aficionado. Thank you. Aficionado. I am not a fighting game aficionado. That's what we've got you here for. Otherwise, I would have left you on the bench at home. But
Yeah.
we've got plenty of games that I've played in the past. Overwatch, I coached that for a while. Did some coaching for a World Cup team. Played some Halo. Didn't get very high in the circuit. So I relegated myself to just talking about the people who are good at the games. And that's what we're going to be covering today. So lately I've been trying to play some games that I wish would come around in the circuit more. The Finals is a game that I have had trouble seeing as like a legitimate esport. There's something about the game that feels like it's not, it might be the balancing. It just makes it feel like it could be anybody's game. Like you could be on a pro level and lose to a brand new player at any time. That one's rough. I picked up First Descendant as well. Not an esport game at all. Likely never will be. I don't think there's really a multiplayer like PvP there that's ever going to come up. It's possible, but I don't think we're going to get anything. Regardless, very fun game. Been having a really good time with that so far. So just going to try to stick to those for now and not expand myself too much, but I'm sure I'm going to try to get ranked on Overwatch this week at some point and Halo all the same. So we'll see what happens. Probably going to stretch myself too thin there. But actually, before we talk about Apex, I do want to cover the Esports World Cup. It's had a little bit it's shaky in the esports community. So I'm going to focus on the teams and not the event so much. Because I do still want to call out some of these organizations that have been participating and note what they've done. So right now, not too many games have finished. I believe it's just Call of Duty, Free Fire, League of Legends, and Mobile Legends Bang Bang. Right now, 3 of those games Team Falcons has actually taken medals in the gold medal in Call of Duty Warzone, interestingly enough. I don't think a lot of people think of Team Falcons when you think of Call of Duty, but when it comes to Warzone, they did end up coming out on top. Free Fire as well took home a gold medal in that, and then a silver medal in Mobile Legends Bang Bang, which is very famous for having a worldwide audience. It's almost got a World Cup of its own that you can play week to week. So very interesting that took the Esports World Cup stage, but I think expected for most people. So those are the 3 medals there that Team Falcons have taken. Red Giant Esports took gold in Mobile Legends, which ties them in second place right now overall, tied with T1, who I think to nobody's surprise took gold in League of Legends. I think that's exactly what everybody would expect them to take. So Fanatics, on the other hand, 5th place in League of Legends, but took home a silver medal in Call of Duty Warzone. Another very interesting team to take home a Call of Duty trophy, a Call of Duty placement on the stand, but once again, not your standard. There's already Call of Duty championships happening within the league themselves, within the Call of Duty League, so not going to expend any of those players to participate in the World Cup, of course. Some notable teams underneath that, tied for 5th, are Top Esports, which got silver in League of Legends, and Evo Esports, which took silver in Free Fire. Team Liquid right now, 2 bronze medals, League of Legends and Mobile Legends Bang Bang. That's a team that I think would be interesting to watch for the duration of the Esports World Cup, because they're a very notable team. Obviously, I think many people know Team Liquid across many different esports. So I think that they're going to rise through the ranks and join the likes of T1, Fnatic, Falcons up there at the top. So that's what's going on in the World Cup right now. It is very, very busy. But of course, leagues are running on their own right now as well. First, we're going to talk about Apex Legends, which has their North American and Europe, Middle East, Africa region, the EMEA. So right now, North America, I believe, how many spots? 12 spots they get, and EMEA 8. So those are the automatic qualifications for the Split 2 playoffs in Apex Legends that are about to be running soon after these last chance qualifiers. Right now, we've got from North America, top 4, the notable teams that place top 4. Team Falcons in first. I mean, Team Falcons having a heck of a week here, heck of 1 or 2 weeks. TSM in second place, Furia Esports in third, and Luminosity in 4th place. Behind them in North America, also qualifying, Space Station Gaming, Bleed Esports, Team Liquid, NRG, not Moist, which is definitely not just Moist. And then Complexity Gaming, Pioneers, and Cloud9. A couple of those teams came out really, really late. They were uncertain whether or not they'd be qualifying, and they had a really great final day to the second split. Cloud9, Complexity, Moist, they all were, it was contentious. They had a lot of people coming for those spots. Some of the teams that were chasing after those spots right behind them, there was Oblivion, who just barely was not able to qualify. I mean, even in about 19th place, Temper, they were also competing for that spot. So there were a lot of really, really close qualifications there at the bottom of the leaderboard. Luckily for those teams, Cloud9, Pioneer, Complexity, Moist, they were all able to just edge out a few extra points through their games. Now, EMEA, I think a region that people focus less on. I'm not sure if it's just the wide audience in North America or because they air it earlier in the morning on the weekends. But to cover what's going on over in EMEA, Alliance took first place in that region, followed by FaZe Clan in second, Game Gladiators in third, and always going to mess this name up, Natus Vincere, however you want to pronounce that, but Navi is how everybody knows them. And then the 4 teams underneath them that also qualified for Split 2 playoffs, Go Next Esports, Passion UA, Trojan, and Exo Clan. So those are the 20 teams that have qualified. There are still last chance qualifiers, so we will see some other teams qualifying for those Split 2 playoffs. Now moving away from Apex, we're going to talk about Valorant. Valorant is moving right now. TJ, what do you know about Valorant?
Not much actually. I've heard a bit. I know that it's coming to console, so I'm interested to see if we'll get any new talents from the console side of things. But Yeah, tell me more about it.
It would be interesting. I mean, we've seen the likes of PC players placing top 6 on mouse and keyboard in Halo, which is a very predominantly controller game. So it would be interesting to see if anybody is able to take to the top ranks on console. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen there. Right now, in the EMEA region, the first games of I guess you want to call it the playoffs of this stage right now that are happening for qualifications for champions. Vitality beat Navi 2-1, and Fnatic were able to beat Carmine Corp 2-1 as well. So some really close games. Fnatic and Vitality both now able to qualify for top 4. We've got Team Heretics waiting for Vitality. They are going to be taking them in that upper bracket semi-finals. And then Foot Esports going to be taking on Fnatic in the second game of that upper bracket semifinals. So we'll see what happens between those teams. Navi and Carmine Corp both eliminated. They do not get a second chance in that knockout stage. So only those 4 teams remaining. Then over in the North America side, we've got the fan favorites Sentinels facing off against the 100 Thieves. This is still the knockout round for North America. They have not played their knockout round yet. Sentinels and 100 Thieves going to go head-to-head, and also going to see Crew Esports take on Cloud9. Waiting in the upper bracket semifinals are Leviathan and G2. So G2 will be playing the winner of Sentinels and 100 Thieves, while Leviathan will be playing the winner of C9 and Crew. Those are a lot of teams there that I think are really popular among multiple esports. Less so Leviathan than some of these other ones, but between Cloud9, Sentinels, 100 Thieves, and G2, those are some really big names in esports. North America is going to have a lot of eyes on them for this Valorant qualifier, for sure. I think it's a region that has its ups and downs in Valorant, for sure. North America just, I mean, it's kind of like every game. League of Legends, CSGO, they always want their superhero moment in that region, but I guess it's just the underdog tactics ever since the Olympics, man. Ever since the college team beat Russia in the Olympics, huh? We always want to go for that underdog. So, yeah, USA, I suppose. North America, we got some Canadians in there as well, teaming up with us. So we will see what happens in the North America region. See if any of those underdogs want to come up. Some of those names not as underdog as others, though. Definitely some teams that could be expected to win some stuff. Now, let's see. Over in which this is the Korean region, I want to say, or Pacific. Sorry, Pacific, right? The Pacific region, which includes Korean teams, in fact, is comprised mostly of Korean players, Japanese and Indonesian as well. They are a lot deeper in their playoff bracket, so we'll talk about what's coming up. What's coming up is the lower bracket finals. So for qualification for grand finals is going to be between DRX and Paper Rex. DRX, a team that I think picked up a lot of fans in the first season of when Valorant really kicked off their esports. I don't know so much about Paper Rex picking up so many fans. I don't know that many people are going to be cheering them on. I think a lot more people want to see DRX win this one and be able to represent in champions. Gen G, however, won their way through the upper bracket and are now waiting in those grand finals to see whether they'll be playing Paper Rex or DRX. The teams that have been eliminated. Paper Rex eliminated Talon in the lower bracket already after DRX defeated them in the upper bracket. Gen G ran their way through RRQ, through PRX, through DRX, and are now in the grand finals. Interestingly enough, Gen G came from that knockout spot. Those 4 teams in the knockout stage, that's where Gen G is coming in from. They did not qualify for an automatic upper bracket semifinal spot. So very interesting that they were able to beat PRX, Paper Rex 2-0, and then DRX 2-1 as well. So they took out both of the teams that qualified ahead of them for that upper bracket spot. They've already beaten both of these teams, and now one of them is going to have to try to take them out in grand finals. So I do think DRX has the better chance of doing so. But we will have to see what happens. My biased input doesn't really end up mattering in the end because these teams are going to do what they want to do. The esports is volatile, especially Pacific Valorant. So we will see what happens over in that region. Finally, to wrap up Valorant, the really, really busy esport that's got everything going on right now, we've got China which has a couple of big names that I think people will recognize. There is Billy Gaming. There's JD Gaming. Those two are going to head off in the knockout stage. Trace Esports and All Gamers as well, going to be going head-to-head in knockout. Already qualified for upper bracket semifinals are Fun Plus Phoenix and Edward Gaming. So these are teams that I think a lot of people recognize from the other Riot esport, being League of Legends, which we're going to touch on later. These teams pretty popular across China in general, but when they go head to head with Korean teams and Pacific teams in general, I think that China absolutely 100% backs their team no matter who it is going in. They really back their representation. And it feels like Korea and America will usually take the side of either the Korean or American team. With Pacific being such a broad region and there being Japanese representation as well in Valorant, I'm really curious to see what the community does and how they back the different regions going into champions with all these different teams qualifying. So that'll be exciting to see. The China region so far not having any progress. They, just like North America, don't have any movement so far on that, so we will be touching on that at a later date. So, out of Valorant, and we're going to touch on some events that recently just went down that you had your eyes on, TJ. The fighting games. There were a couple of tournaments, I understand, that were one of which was a qualifier for another. So what's going on over there in the fighting game world?
So this weekend we got two tournaments that just recently happened. We've got a Japan Invitational that had a prize pool of about $12,000. 24 players were invited. This is from the Street Fighter League, so this is going to be in Street Fighter. This is like their own within Japan, so you're not really going to see any foreign talents in here. So we got Kobayan taking first, playing solo Zangief, which is quite impressive. He won that over Kakeru, who was playing Bison and Akuma, which are two like fairly new characters. They came out the past 2 or 3 months, so it's really impressive to see him making waves with these new characters. We've got Momochi placing third, playing Ed, which is also a season 1 DLC character. So these Japan is known for pushing the meta and thinking outside the box. So this is going to be an interesting tournament to watch VODs from and get some tech if you're a fan of these characters. We also had a tournament in Lyon, France, and this was more of a qualifier, less of the prize pool. We got Angry Bird taking first with his kin, and if you remember Angry Bird, he's got his partner Big Bird, who's also from the UAE. He won Evo 2023. So we got Angry Bird taking first over Noah the Prodigy, which looks like the only American representative we have at this tournament. So the top two from this is the Mix-Up 24. Top two from this are automatically qualified for the Esports World Cup 2024. So we've got Evo also coming up this weekend. July 19th is the first. So that should be exciting, and plenty of exciting events coming up soon.
Yeah, definitely going to have you touch on Evo next week. We're going to be covering that big time. I'm sure you'll be riding the hype from that tournament coming into Monday. So that'll be
for sure.
That'll be great to cover.
Yeah.
That Street Fighter meta, has that Street Fighter 6 meta developed yet, or are people still just kind of going with whatever they can kind of shake it up with?
Well, so we've got so Capcom took a bold approach to their balancing philosophy. First season, they said they would release the game and not release a major patch until a year later. So around March, we got a big shakeup in the tier list. Tons of balances. Zangief is actually one of the biggest winners from this patch. He's got moves have a lot more plus frames. He's a lot more safe for on block, and it's just harder to deal with. So we're seeing waves being made from these changes that they're doing. But I just hope we get another balanced patch before next year.
Yeah. All right. Exciting to follow. Yeah, Street Fighter and Tekken both getting new releases within the last year was pretty awesome for the fighting game community. I know Big Bummer was I think maybe one of the less competitive but more fun. And I don't mean less competitive in a bad way. What I mean is there's a wider pool of players. There's very high skilled players and very low skilled players all competing. That's Super Smash Brothers. Took a big hit recently, actually quite a few big hits over the last couple of years, just not getting the support that they want in that community to run these big tournaments. The players are really unheard of until the major tournaments come around, and then suddenly everybody remembers Super Smash Brothers again. So,
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunate that happened to them, but really good for the fighting game community that Tekken 8 Street Fighter both had new releases. It gives a lot of opportunities, and then some of these, like, I guess I would say the big three for fighters, even though maybe not in esports, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Street Fighter, these are the ones where people will flock to one or the other. But
Hmm.
man, these anime fighting games have just been, everybody is getting into them now. They are
Oh yeah.
crossing oceans to come over, and people are getting into them. People have always
Yeah.
been into them, but they are getting way, way bigger now. These
Yeah.
communities for, I mean, even the ones people don't pay attention to, right? DNF Duel and
Mhm.
all that stuff. But I think the biggest one to come out of that would probably be what's that? Guilty Gear. There you go. Guilty
Yeah,
Gear.
yeah. The reason we're seeing a lot of influx of these like new players is it's just accessibility. A lot of these games are easier to get into. We've got Under Night, which is another one, Grand Blue Fantasy, and I want to go over quickly the games we'll be seeing at Evo
Yes,
this
absolutely.
weekend. We'll be seeing some Street Fighter, Tekken, of course, Guilty Gear, the big three, like you said. Grand Blue is one, and a surprising one is Third Strike, which is like a 20+ year old game, and it's
All
still
right.
and then longtime fans are really excited for this because it hasn't been at Evo. You know, Evo Moment 37.
Oh yeah.
That's that's from Third Strike. So hopefully we'll get some cool moments from that out of that this weekend.
Yeah, great to see. Okay, that's great. Bringing back stuff like that is, I mean, that's how you keep a community together. Fighting game community is very loosely tied. Nobody really knows what that means. There's not a specific group of games included in that. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, running through processes of like getting these games in and out of the major tournaments, it's probably the best idea for the community to keep everybody
Yeah,
together. So
yeah,
very cool to see. Well,
yeah.
you talked about those balance changes in Street Fighter that are really shaking things up running up to Evo. Something that I think one community is very happy about will be Pokemon. Pokemon is very happy that they are not changing the regulation for the World Championship. It is going to be the regulation that they closed out on for the final regionals and internationals. So thankfully, all these players will be ready. They'll be bringing what they're experienced with. It'll be a good time. And we were actually able to have a conversation with one of these players, Stefan Mott, to see what he thought about the upcoming World Championship and even a little bit of the 2025 season, since we've now gotten a little bit of information on that. So go ahead and listen, hear him out, see if maybe you find a new enjoyment in Pokemon, and enjoy. My guest today is a Pokemon player that wanted the commentary desk to speak about him so highly that he decided to get engaged to one of them. So, Stefan, how are we doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for joining us for the launch of the podcast. We really appreciate you sitting down to talk to us about the Pokemon scene. I think it's one of the scenes that are less known to players because there's not as much, there's not franchising and there's not as many organizations that draw attention to it. So, really excited to have you talk about Pokemon in particular. So, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So right now, World's obviously approaching very fast. I'm sure it feels even quicker for you than everybody else who's just on the edge of their seat waiting for it to happen. What is World prep looking like for you right now?
Uh, Not a lot. Like Worlds is like for context. I don't know when exactly this is coming out. Worlds in 5 weeks from when we're recording this. The format kind of sucks. So like we're at a weird spot where the format is hyper centralized. There's not really all that much innovation to be made. So like a lot of the time in like the gap between NAIC and Worlds, you're trying to keep up with meta shifts and like what are people gonna be cooking to like shift up like how are people gonna counter the centralized things? This format just like there isn't really much room for creativity. So like a lot of the stuff that you would prioritize in prep just isn't all that relevant. So it's been a kind of nice opportunity to just kind of chill for a little bit and not focus on BG. Um and like a little bit of a mental break is good. NAIC was a lot earlier this year than it usually is, so we really just kind of had a natural break built in. So I'm going to start prepping a little bit harder in the coming week or so, but it's been nice to just kind of chill. And other than that, like we've been throwing around ideas in a couple of building groups that I'm in. I'm I probably know what I'm bringing to Worlds at this point, so it's just going to be about like figuring out the best way to approach the team and just general matchup prep and just making sure that we're not actually missing anything when it comes to like meta shifts or anything like that.
Yeah, and something that happens in the Pokemon scene too that I've seen a lot when it comes to Worlds is there will be a couple of players that think that a meta can be like revolutionized in the last minute. They want to try to bring something a huge surprise, and sometimes it works. I mean, in the senior division last year, the senior division champion at Worlds last year brought some very unconventional stuff. So it
Yeah.
was cool to see. But yeah.
In the Master Division, the caveat there is that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work and has never worked. Balance always wins Worlds. So yeah, like you could do really well with like a good meta call. Bro. Well, I mean, Joe is my bro, but Bro Ugardi brought Wo Chien team to top cut of Worlds last year, which was like a solid call. And, like, there's a lot of things like that which can be off meta picks that will do well, but generally speaking, Worlds is probably just going to be won by the best player who solves the format's balance core. Ultimately, though, like you're usually, depending on who you are, like most people who are being honest with their chances are very happy to make a day 2 run or to top cut Worlds. Like not everyone is like make or break on winning the tournament, whereas like later on in the season, if you've already got your Worlds invite, if you have like all your points locked up, people might go for broke a little bit more on regionals where really all you're trying to do is either I win the tournament or I don't care. Whereas like that's kind of an approach that exists for very few people for Worlds. So, like, if you think a meta call is going to be a really good way to achieve your goal, whether that's day 2 or whether that's top cut or whether that's like a 5-3 showing day 1 that's just very, very solid, like, meta calls can be really, really good for that. But if you're trying to, like, win Worlds, most of the time it's going to be something that plays pretty normally, maybe some neat techs on the team. That usually goes quite a long way. But fundamentally, it should be a pretty normal team that wins.
Yeah, there's a lot to break down there because with Scarlet and Violet, the terrestrialization mechanic feeds into what you were talking about with text there. And then there's also the balance teams that you talked about. Those look a little bit different than they used to. In more recent formats, we've been seeing things come in that were part of Sword and Shield, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, things like that. Those are starting to make their way back in, but it looks a little different right now. So for people who are maybe new to the scene or don't know what they're looking at in this particular game, what does balance look like right now in the Pokemon competitive scene?
Yeah, so fundamentally, the biggest thing that looks different these days is typing cores are not really that huge a thing. Like, obviously, there's really nice synergy between the standard fire, water, grass core. Like, there are cores that are really nice to have, but we're not at a point anymore where, like, if your team doesn't have fire, water, grass, what are you doing? Like, you could just, like, kind of compensate for that with different Terra types here and there, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be Terra types in like those specific types, but it's like, all right, I like having Incineroar and Rillaboom because if Rillaboom is attacked by a fire type move, I can switch into my Incineroar and it'll be fine. But it's like, I can just turn my Rillaboom into a water type. Like that also works, right? Like, so that's kind of the biggest thing that's a little bit different. There is the standard fire, water, grass core of Urshifu, Incineroar, Rillaboom that's really, really strong, but that's less because fire, water, grass is so good, and more because each of those individual pieces is so good. And they also happen to be fire, water, grass, which is a benefit. But a lot of the time, the sort of conventional wisdom of we need to have like fire water grass core or fantasy core, like these different things that are like common knowledge that are good to have are really not strictly necessary. Shiliang Tang just top cut NAIC with 4 dark types on his team. So like
Yeah.
that's I think the thing that is the most different, and that is fundamentally because of Terra.
Yeah, Terra typing's been crazy ever since. I mean, when it first started, and I mean, even from minute 1, when the discussion was whether or not people were going to know or not what the Terra types were going to be on the other side. When it's a secret, it's almost like gambling. Pokemon became even more of a gambling game than it already is. It was really rough. So, and honestly, I will say I was one of the holdouts to. I stayed on the no team sheet, no open team sheet a lot longer than some people did. I just was a real stickler about like, no, it's part of the game design, it's part of the strategizing. You have to be ready for anything. The most well-rounded team will win. And then I finally got time to start playing competitively online, and I was like, no, absolutely not. This is awful. I'm getting caught out by things that absolutely should not be happening. So,
yeah, like it's just impossible to cover for everything, and especially when you factor in Terra, like I don't think that we're gonna ever go back to closed team sheets.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it would be as big a problem on other format or like with another mechanic. Like with Dynamax, it wasn't that big of a deal, for example. But like a great example that I like to use is I'm really bad at playing best of one closed team sheet.
Okay.
So I'm really bad at the global challenges. And for the second global challenge of last season, I went in and I was like, I'm going to build the biggest anti-BS team that is possible. I'm going to have screens and like terrains and like flash fire, terra grass, ceruledge so I can't get hit by spore. It's like terra, like all these things. So it was specifically designed to like remove all of the random closed team sheet shenaniganry. And on like my third game, my opponent leads Salamence into me. Terra Water Hydro pumps my Ceruledge turn 1. I'm like, oh, okay. Was I supposed to cover for that? So I think open team sheets is the only reason why a Terra format is playable in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think with open team sheets, I think Terra is really, really cool. It makes team building a lot more dynamic. There are some things that make team building a little restrictive. I think single restricted specifically can make team building very, very restrictive. We're seeing that a lot in the memes that are not entirely jokes about how like, oh, my world team's gonna be Urshi, Rilla, Incin, Raging Bolt, and a restricted, and then one Mon that I can mess around with.
Yeah.
But like, generally speaking, outside of the centralizing factors that are not like Terra related, like it makes team building a lot more dynamic and gives you a lot of opportunities to make Pokemon that might otherwise struggle really, really good. We've seen that with like Dragonite as a Pokemon that has never been good for, and it's really good in Scarlet and Violet. That's really cool. I like when Pokemon can take advantage of the mechanics to like have an unconventional Pokemon do well for a couple years. Even if Dragonite fades back into obscurity, even if we never see some of these Pokemon that are really good because of Terra ever again, it's cool that they had their moment in the sun, and that's like what I want to see from a generational mechanic. I want the mechanic to make Pokemon that are not always good for once, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. This generation has been pretty crazy already, but now that it's settled down, you had mentioned I don't know if we'll ever go back to closed team sheet, but I almost wonder if the same fuss would still be made about closed team sheet now that people are so aware of this, like, but maybe it's because of open team sheet. It may be because of open team sheet that everybody is aware of what's going on. No one's trying to bring secret water Terra Salamances anymore because you can read that immediately, and the element of surprise is the only thing that keeps that on its feet. So it's like open team sheet got rid of the problem, but if it were to close again, the problem would come back. So you have to keep the open team sheet, unfortunately.
Fundamentally, the other discussion that was had a lot right when they announced that it was going to be open team sheet going forward is that, like, I think more casual players, even players who play competitive but are not like on the grind, like, you know, the people who like might go to one regional in a season, like those kind of players don't fully understand what open and closed team sheet do at the top level. So like if you're Johnny who's going into his only regional and is going to go 4-5 and is okay with going 4-5. Like, you're not trying to qualify for Worlds. You just want to go have fun, and you want to catch people off guard with your Quash Sableye or whatever. Like, that, like, you are going to like the people who build those kind of surprise factor teams are going to really like having closed team sheet because it gives the more casual player the ability to catch people off guard and do cool, unique stuff in the team builder. But at the higher level, if you were to try to run something like that and you played, if you played my friend Nick, in round 3, and you were running like, I don't know, like what's even a good example, but like if you were running like fake tears, fake out Grimmsnarl instead of like a standard screen set,
Yep.
and you played against my friend Nick, and then Nick plays, and then like you roll up against me 2 rounds later, my friend Nick's gonna tell me that that's what your
Yeah.
Grimmsnarl is, and you're not gonna win the game. Like, you immediately lose because I have that information. And so like the idea that people have where it's like, I want to be able to build really sneaky tactics and I want players to be able to do well with that. Players don't do well with that. Like,
Yeah.
it fundamentally becomes super disadvantageous to ever be on stream. It makes it really, really difficult for us as players who, like, for me, like, I like being on stream. A lot of players like being on stream, but if you create a disadvantage for being on stream, then it's going to be harder to like convince players to go on stream. If you want to bring like Paul Ruiz on stream, but he's really trying to win the event, like, he might not want to go on stream. Like, it makes things harder for production. Like, closed team sheet has a lot of these really small added issues that are not like massive, but they all kind of compound on each other and make it not a great experience. And like the scouting that a lot of people talk about, like, there is no way to combat that. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, try to put a rule in the rule book that I'm not allowed to talk to my friends about their matches in case I play against the same person later? Like, it just ends up being weird, where then in closed team sheet, if you play against an easier schedule, not only do you have an easier schedule, but if I'm playing people who are not top level players, they're probably not friends with the top level players, and they're probably not passing on my information. Whereas if, like, John played against 3 top players, I probably know one of them. Like, I could go ask them what he was using, and then that creates this really unfortunate kind of disadvantage where, like, in like in Indianapolis in 22, which is the regional that I won, in top 16, I played against a player who was running Zacian Thunderous, which was a very favorable matchup for me if I knew what the item was on the Thunderous. And I was told that the Thunderous was Assault Vest, so I immediately knew the line to go for, and I won the game immediately, because he did not know that I had specific close team sheet tech to auto win against AV Thunderous. So I just won. Like, that's silly. Like, that shouldn't exist.
I don't think people understand how different Pokemon is as an esport, because while the players and the level of competition has been completely legitimized at this point, it never lost the community basis that it came from. It's an open floor, hundreds of people. I mean, when I first spoke to you, we were at, I believe it was Charlotte, right? Where there were like 600, 700 players just for VGC alone. And those people are walking around talking to each other about strategies, about what's working on their own team to let their friends know that they team built with, and then also telling them what, as you get later in the day, more people drop out, it starts to, the pool of players starts to close. People are talking about what other players have and what to look out for, and you run into people that your friends are going to run into, and you usually are there with a group of like 5 other people hanging out, so you're bound to run into some of the same players. And it's a really, really interesting dynamic, but I think other esports still have that anyways, just in a quieter fashion. It's not really people standing around on the floor talking about, oh, this is the strategy that, you know, Optic is running on this map of Halo. It's more of a backstage prep and practice kind of thing, but it still happens. It's just really interesting to watch it happen live on the floor at a Pokemon event, where someone who's considered a professional player can end up going like 3-X and be like, dude, I had a horrible weekend. That's it. I got beat by some kid who's at his first regional right now, and that's just how it's gonna be this event. So.
Yeah, I do love that about Pokemon, though. I think like the scale of the tournaments is part of what makes it really, really cool. It's really fun to walk in and just see, like, all right, I'm on table 496. Like, it's only up from here. Like, let's go. There was a regional last season where I was playing round 1 at the lowest table, and I was like, this is like neat. Like, I get to see how far I can try to go up from here. But I think like that kind of community aspect is really, really interesting. And I think partially, like, I hate closed team sheet best of 1 with a burning passion. It fills me with rage. But I really kind of like that the in-game ladder is that way, because you do have those people who want to try fun stuff. That's kind of what, on a more casual level, team building in Pokemon is fun, because you just get to do fun stuff and come up with like funny ideas, and like when it works, you're like, I won with my Rotom strategy, like, and that's really fun. So I'm really kind of glad that the in-game ladder is still closed team sheet, because first of all, it'd be kind of hard for them to do open team sheet. Like
Yeah.
I can think of a couple ways, but like it would be very unintuitive for like newer players. But like I feel like it's important to have that like funny sort of creative uh entry point where people can just throw stuff at the wall and like have fun with this goofy strategy that worked. And like I'm gonna go tink a ton of Eternatus and just like spam
Yeah.
sludge wave feint. Like that's funny. Um and I think like that kind of creativity is very important in breeding interest in Pokemon for newer players before they get to the jaded point where they realize most of those strategies are in fact quite bad. And then they push past that point to the point where they're good enough to make them work again, and then it's funny. But
Yeah.
like I think like that kind of community aspect is really, really important for Pokemon. It's really important for the growth of the game. I think like that, like the fact that anybody could just roll up to a regional and play, and like you could pull Wolf round one. Like
Yeah. Could happen.
that's kind of cool. Like if I was a casual player, I would find that awesome.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, I don't really want to pull Wolf round one, but like if I was going to like a regional just for fun, I think that would be super cool. Just like play against one of the best players in the world round one, just like have that opportunity. And the fact that you could do that, and that it is Pokemon, so like, you know, everyone can win if things go your way. If you play really, really poorly, you need a lot of stuff to go your way.
Yeah.
But like theoretically, you could beat anybody you play against. And I think that also kind of gets a lot of people interested, because like, you know, you go in any single game, like you could win. And I think a lot of people have that kind of belief in themselves in Pokemon in a way that doesn't exist in a lot of other games. Because like I come from a StarCraft 2 background,
Mm.
and if you are worse, you are almost always going to lose. Just
Yeah.
like if I played 500 games against Serral, I would win 0 games against Serral. If I played 500 games against Wolf as a brand new player, I'd probably win a few of them.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of cool. Like I won my first ever local, which I went to like 3 weeks after starting the game. I rolled Chuppa round one, and I took a game off him with admittedly BS RNG, but I still
Okay.
took a game off of Chuppa. And like
Yeah.
that's something that like for the whole beginning of my Pokemon like adventures, I guess, I was able to like say that to myself, be like, I beat Chuppa Cross in a game. Like that's cool.
And how long
And
ago was that now that you started it? I mean,
that was 2020.
it was 2020, right? I think a lot of the Pokemon players that are at the top right now, I think, like in the groupings, you go on and you check, a lot of them have been around for a while, but I think the pinnacle of this generation, a lot of newer players have been deciding like what the top of the ladder is going to look like. The strategies have been developed by, I think early on it was a lot of the, for lack of a better word, the old timers, the guys that have been around for a while now. You've known their name for years, but lately the meta will develop in a regulation, and the name of the person who figured out the formula first is somebody I've never heard of in my life. And I think that goes to show what having hundreds of players at a single regional event all over the country and then all over the world is going to do for the community. Is people are going to be coming out of the woodworks to just change and define the game. And I don't know if there are a lot of games where that can happen.
So I actually disagree. I feel like if you look at who's won the regionals in North America, for example, it's almost exclusively people who have been playing for over 10 years.
Oh, winning, yes. I just meant a like new meta defining, like at the beginning of a regulation, who comes out with the like optimal strategy and idea. It'll be some clip of a guy's Twitch stream that I've never seen in my life running a team that everybody starts trying out, kind of thing.
Maybe. I feel like a lot of the time it's a top player figuring something out, and then it kind of trickles down. Like the last 2 regulations have just been Wolf figuring it out day one, and then like everyone like 2 months later being like, oh, maybe Wolf was right. It's like, yeah, he was. We're all idiots. But yeah, I think like the the regulation G stuff at the very beginning was figured out by Jamodri, who's like a little bit of a newer player. I think he started also around COVID time. So like it definitely does happen. I think it happens more in Europe than it happens in the US. I think the US is really kind of dominated by that group of players who's been playing for eons at this point.
Yeah.
Like if you click on like any given regional, there's a lot of newcomers who make day 2.
Yes.
But the higher up you get, the more it is just like people who have been playing for a bajillion years. And like just looking at the winners, like Riley James, Eternal Snowman, Chuppa, Gio Costa, Underhill, Wolf, James Evans, Toller Webb, like Rajan. Like these are all people who've been playing for forever. Yeah. And then you do have Montana. So shout outs to Montana for being the one exception in North America. But yeah, it's I actually find that really, really interesting though. I think it's really, really cool. It speaks to the level of play that you can reach as a player, where like you look at the people who are at the top consistently, and it's like if RNG was that big of a factor over a 2-day tournament, these people would not be so consistently topping tournaments.
Right.
And like that's what you could strive for, and like you can in Pokemon get good enough to on a broader scale beat the RNG. Where like if you play super crazy well across like 14 rounds, you can get super unlucky in like 5 sets and still top cut, because like you get super lucky, like you get super unlucky in like 1 set, but you play so well you win anyway. You get super unlucky in like 3 sets, you lose those ones, but like you outplay 2 positions from a really bad position. You're X and 3 if you played perfectly in all the other rounds. That's enough to top cut.
Yeah.
So like the ability to sort of outplay the RNG on a macro scale is, I think, a really, really great thing to strive for as a Pokemon player. Because like that is something that is attainable, and it's something that I think a lot of new players need to need to learn, because a lot of people will inevitably at the beginning of their journey just blame RNG for everything. It's like, oh, I got crit to lose the game. It's like, oh, I missed Draco Meteor and I lost the game. It's like, okay, but like Draco Meteor is 90% accuracy. If you click this 100% accuracy move, you wouldn't have actually been open to the miss and you would have won anyway.
Yeah, everything
like
is a choice,
small
even
things like
from
that.
Team building. Yep.
Exactly. And like you see that in the way Riley builds his teams by just like running exclusively 100% accurate moves.
Yeah, never wants to lose to, and that, hey, that's been working out for him the last 2 seasons as well. So there's another player that's been just staying at the top. It probably raises the bar for entry on a day 2 or top cut kind of situation, because you talked about how you do have to play almost flawlessly. You have to overcome the RNG. And for a community, looking at it from a community outlook, yes, it does stink that less players are going to be seen in that top cut in that day 2, but it is a competitive space. It is an esport. It is, so you're supposed to be able to reach a level in which you can reach the top through only skill. And so from a competitive outlook, which I think maybe sometimes not everybody is looking at it from, it is better for the ecosystem. Whereas if it were harder to overcome the RNG and there was just so much of it, it would become a less competitive atmosphere. Sure, the community would maybe have more fun with it, but I think it would be harder to legitimize it as a competitive game that can be played against each other.
Yeah, and I think like Pokemon has this perfect balance, in my opinion, where like in a microcosm of any individual game, any player can lose to any player in that one game. Beating the RNG does not mean winning every single game regardless of how unlucky you get. It means winning enough games where you get unlucky to be able to overcome the ones where you're like not able to win. Like if I hit an unfavorable matchup against like Aaron Trailer and I get unlucky, I'm not gonna win. Like he's not gonna give me the space that I need to win in that circumstance. But like a lot of players, you can outplay them while getting unlucky. Where like there's a player that I played against in an early round of Portland who basically went into the set, identified that they had a line that they could go for where they would win if I missed sleep powder turn 1. They locked in on 25% of the time I win this match, and they basically felt like that was their best chance of winning, which was an interesting way to calculate the matchup that I had never considered before. Like, I would never in my life go for a line that gives me a 25% chance of winning. That seems insane to me. But they locked into that, and like, I missed 2 of the sleep powders, but I was able to then use my superior knowledge of calcs to be able to come through and be able to play towards an out that allowed me to win the set 2-1 anyway, based on knowing my damage rolls better, being able to position according to certain things. Like, they made a rookie mistake in game 2 where I think max rolled me with Wicked Blow on their Urshifu. I was surprised that my Pokemon had fainted, and then they said, I'm not even adamant. So, like, going into game 3, I'm like, oh, okay, I know for a fact that this Pokemon will live this hit because they gave me that extra info. So it's like, small things like that do legitimately happen. And like, all of those things are like ways that you can like kind of tap into things like knowing calcs, knowing lines, like being able to do all of those things to maximize your chances of winning, even when you do get unlucky. And it's not always going to work, but if it works enough times, then like you will consistently be topping these events. The biggest thing is like, if you play super well over the course of 15 rounds, like if you were to play optimally, you should never lose the games that are favorable. You should never lose the games where you get lucky. And then like if you get unlucky in like 4 games and win 1 of them, then you're X3 and you're in contention for top cut. Yeah. The harder part is playing super consistently for 15 rounds.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's one of the most grueling sessions of any competitive game that I've ever seen. I would say Pokemon has been around the longest, and I think less people have paid attention to it. When Battle Royales came around, I think that's when people started to realize how much having to do multiple rounds of gameplay repeatedly against, and I mean, this applies for Pokemon too, some of the same things over and over and over. You're running into, out of your, if you're talking 15 games, if you're going to go all the way to the end, you might run into the same team 10, somewhere from 7 to 10 times, and you have to keep playing it every time and remember that you're going against a different brain behind the team every single time that you play it. It is so tricky and so grueling to do that for 2 or 3 days, depending on how long you're there. And seriously, the mental fortitude. There's a reason that these people get into strategy games. You guys have a mental fortitude that is like required to make it in this competitive environment.
I think the other thing is that like there are very, 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 very few players who can like pull out 14 or 15 good sets in a row. And a lot of the time, like other players who get really good finishes, like myself included, just happen to like it's your day, which like when I think everybody has a different understanding of the phrase, like it has to be your day. For me, what that means is like the matches where I played badly, I wasn't punished. Where like ideally, I'm striving to get to a level where I don't play any matches poorly, right? But like EUIC, I went 8-1 on day 1, and I felt like I played awful because like I had 2 opponents that had the games completely locked and just didn't see their win con and threw the games. And it's like I went 8-1. It was my best day 1 of the season to that point, but it wasn't like I wasn't happy with my play. I wasn't like super thrilled because I felt like I didn't really play very well, and I didn't feel like I deserved to go 8-1. But sometimes that's how it's gonna be, right? Like sometimes you'll play 1 round poorly, and it'll be the difference where like in San Antonio, I played, in my opinion, 8 really solid rounds of Pokemon and 1 bad round, and I had like 1 auto loss matchup. I got super hacked out in a round, and I played bad once. And if I didn't play bad that 1 round, that's me going to day 2.
Yeah.
So like even having 1 bad round, if it falls on the wrong sort of round, can like really destroy the entire tournament run. So that's why you see people like Wolf this season is the best example, or like Riley last season, and to a lesser extent this season, like the people who can pull out all of those consecutive rounds just playing well will just consistently be at the top because like that one like that they don't have that one bad round that turns the 7-2 into a 6-3.
Yeah, well, I mean, consistency doesn't just get you to the top, gets you to the World Championships as a qualifier, and that's where you're headed after this. You're headed to beautiful Hawaii, which is, I know we'd all much rather be there than in our house. So, how excited are you to end off your summer in Hawaii at the World Championship? What are you looking forward to?
I've never been to Hawaii, so that's gonna be really, really fun. One of the things that we're trying to do as a community on the whole, but also personally, is like we're trying to find more ethical ways to visit Hawaii. Like try to support like native owned businesses and stuff like that, which is a little bit difficult these days. A lot of the stuff is not native owned these days, but
Yeah.
we're doing our best, and it's
Yeah.
been really, really heartening to see the community as a whole kind of band behind that idea, which is really, really neat. But it's just gonna be it's gonna be exciting. I think my Worlds experience last year was miserable. So I'm hoping to have a better Worlds experience this time around. The goal is essentially just to day 2, I think, but the Worlds format's different, so I have to like Worlds format is good, but it's different. So I have to think about like targets and stuff a little bit more because it's like just fundamentally not going to be the same as it was the last couple seasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be fun. I'm really excited that like a lot of my friends have qualified, and like I think we have the controversial decision to limit qualifiers to the top 75 next season. So I think this is likely to be the only Worlds that is going to be this big.
Yeah.
So it'll be really cool to be a part of that. It'll be really, really cool to see some of the friends who I've made this season who have sort of qualified on their first season going for it. Hopefully do well. There are some of the newer players who got over the line who are going to be there are really talented. I think there are a lot of players who have kind of not had a breakout performance this season, but have gotten very good. And I think if they have a good day, like they could make something happen at Worlds, which would be really, really cool. I'd love to see one of the like newer North American guys kind of pop off a little bit. I think it's going to be interesting to see just how Worlds shakes out as well, with just the sheer number of people as well. I think we're going to have a pretty big top cut, and yeah, excited. I think it'll be fun.
That's going to be a lot of pressure for those newer players that you were talking about, knowing having the 2025 format announced and knowing that this is the last World Championship that's going to be this open and this accessible, at least if the format continues the way that it looks in 2025. That's a little bit of pressure, but also probably motivation for those players. Like, this is my chance to shine, sit myself at the top, get a good playing group that can recognize me and wants to utilize, some of my talents for practice. And there's a lot of things that can happen, and it's going to be a chance for 2025 could look a little different. So, but that
I would expect some players to have like the idea that like, like first time qualifiers to be like, all right, if I qualify for Worlds, what can I actually do? Where like, I hope that a lot of them are just going in to have fun, because Worlds is a very different tournament experience than anything else. And like, I feel like your first Worlds is about learning how Worlds is.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be surprised if a few people with the new format go in and say like, all right, I need to do like reasonably well to justify pushing for Worlds next year. So hopefully that I would hope that people are not looking at it that way. But if they are, hopefully that pushes some people to have like a really, really awesome showing.
Yeah, and you said Worlds is a different experience, but like how different in the fact that the competition level or the way that it's organized and played by the players?
A combination of the competition level and the fact that there's no real meta. Like we have 2.5 months of no tournaments, and no good players are using their real teams right now. Like you can go on Limitless and look at a tournament. I think one of the traps that new Worlds qualifiers fall into a lot is they'll like believe the meta they see online.
Okay.
Which is not true. So like you'll have newer players try to make a meta call, and because like, if you're considering yourself lower than the average player level at the tournament, like going for a meta call seems like a good idea, but then you're making a meta call for a meta that's not real. And then you're rolling up and just getting bodied by all these teams that your meta call was not designed to beat. So like that's also one of the reasons why I think like really for the most part, solid balance wins Worlds every year, because you have to have a team that's going to do well against the stuff that like not to call it random stuff, like, we know what's good, we can theory what people will probably be looking into, but like you can't go into this with like a matchup spreadsheet of like, well, I know the Rajon Maridon team that has this much usage right now, because it's like
Yeah.
there is no regional leading up to it. There is nothing. It's not as bad as last year, where it was the first tournament of the format.
Right.
And there's like very little innovation to be done in this format. But like making a hard meta call is probably not going to be a good idea for a lot of newer players, even though it might seem like that's a way to potentially close the gap between them and other players at Worlds.
Yeah, well, we really, really look forward to seeing you at Worlds. I have a feeling you're going to show out big. You seem like you've been really motivated, kept a level head when things aren't going exactly your way, and you've had some really exciting highs. So super excited to see you at Worlds. Obviously, wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Stefan's social medias will be linked down below, so go ahead and check him out. Make sure you follow him and follow his streak all the way through the world. And you were our best guest so far here on episode 1, so we'll see how long.
Also
you can
the
keep
worst
that
one,
streak
technically.
alive. That's true. Maybe you'll have a chance to redeem yourself after Worlds. We'll catch up with you again. We'll see what happens.
All right.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much to Stefan Mott. We appreciate him being our first guest, giving us some insight on a esport that I think a lot of people should pay more attention to. It's got a really great community. They have put on fantastic events, and for anybody looking to get into a new competitive video gaming space, Pokemon is a really great place to go. A lot of things to think about, a lot of things to learn. It'll keep you occupied, that's for sure. But last year's World Championship was fantastic. I'm sure this one's going to be great again. Last year's World Championship, I actually wanted to highlight the senior division. I talked about it a little bit during the interview, but Tomoya Ogawa, man, the champion from the senior division last year, he used such a fun team. Zapdos, Sylveon, Rillaboom, Urshifu, Gastrodon, and Hisuian Arcanine. And that team was so much fun to watch. And, I mean, honestly, so much fun to play, because as soon as the World Championships was finished, I loaded that rental team up. Then I went to town with it. So that is a fantastic team. The World Championships is always a great time. Definitely tune in if you have the time. But that is not quite yet. World Championship 2024 is still a little bit away. We will let you know when it is coming up. What we do have in the Pokemon community, though, is we just had a tournament leading up to Honolulu from Victory Road, which is probably the biggest tournament supporter of the Pokemon community outside of the official tournaments. So the outcome of the Victory Road to Honolulu bracket is that the winner was a top 4 placer from the 2023 World Championship. It is Federico Camporesi, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, Italian player who used the Ice Rider Calyrex, the Rillaboom, a Rock Mask Ogerpon. I can't quite remember the name of that specific mask. It's the Rock type one, so the Rock type Ogerpon, Urshifu, Farigiraf, and Raikou, the Raikou Evolution Raging Bolt. Not Evolution, what am I talking about? The Raikou Paradox form. There we go, from the past. Yeah, with the big neck, long neck dinosaur man. He, utilize that guy. We're going to definitely see that guy in the World Championship, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, using that Ice Rider as the restricted, we'll see if that's what he wants to take to the World Championship or not. I know Stefan mentioned it in the interview. A lot of players won't bring their final World Championship ready team to any tournaments leading up to it, but this is the Victory Road tournament. This is like the behind the World Championship. This is the biggest thing happening right now at this moment. So this is the one. Like, this is where the entire community has all eyes on it. Anybody who wants to participate will participate. In fact, the 2023 World Champion, Shohei Kimura, he came in at the number 3 seed and lost in the top 16. So there are players right now just jumping up the ranks. I think it's actually notable to mention, he was beaten by a player named Yuki Shimizu. So for a lot of people who aren't as familiar with the Japanese region, they do have a lot of a lot of the countries in Asia actually have internal tournaments, and they don't need to go to international events because they have national championships and they have special events within their own countries and regionals as well. So a little bit harder sometimes to know what's going on in Korea, in Japan, Indonesia, Thailand. All these countries have their own tournaments happening. Sometimes hard for us to keep up in the EU and NA. So this is an important thing to keep an eye on. That is Yuki Shimizu. Yuki Shimizu. That is the player that came in at the 14 seed, defeated Shohei Kimura, our reigning world champion. We will see if Shohei wants to bring the same team to the World Championship or not. Like I said, it is very possible that all of these players will be bringing a at least slightly different team to the World Championship. But we saw some interesting ones. I mean, we saw Venusaur in the top 16. Venusaur, to my memory, not been popular since the last generation, Sword and Shield. So very cool to see that Venusaur made an appearance in the top 16 of this tournament. There's also Suicune in the top 16 of this tournament. Not a walking wake, not the paradox form, but Suicune itself, just Suicune, brought by a Finnish player. That is Oppo. Oh, man. It's Oppo. That's definitely his first name. I'm not going to make an attempt at that last name. Yeah, I am. Let's try it. It is I want to Naimaranta. I want to say Oppo Naimaranta is his name. So keep an eye on him. Finnish player there, came in at the 11th seed. Korean player at the number 2. Jong-So Lee brought a Kyogre team. Actually pretty standard Kyogre team as well. So it's possible that that's going to be a team that we see, maybe even from him himself. In terms of United States, our own turf. We had 2 players in the top 16, one of which went out in the top 16. The other made it to top 2, which is pretty great. So we'll see what happens. It's been Japan for most of the World Championship history in Pokemon. They know the game inside and out. Their community has a domination of that game. But we do have our representatives. Wolf Glick has been on fire this season. You can always rely on the likes of Riley Factura, Stefan. Goodness, just messed up his name after speaking to him. Stefan Mott going to be there as well. Although let's be careful about he likes to rep his. He might sound like an American, but he likes to rep a different flag. You can ask him about it sometime. He may have a secret nationality that you don't know about. So we'll see. But either way, we can cheer him on. He is a USA home front player, so we will be cheering him on anyways. He's going to do a fantastic job. We're excited for that. Let's close this one out, man. I mean, we got Call of Duty and League of Legends running some big tournaments right now. Call of Duty running the biggest tournament that they have. That is their Call of Duty Worlds. So we've got the 8 teams qualified. It has not begun yet. We are right on time to start talking about this. All in the winner's bracket right now. Very first round. We have the Atlanta FaZe going up against Miami. That's going to be an interesting game. The New York Sublimers are going to be going up against Seattle. We have Toronto going up against LA. And Optic Texas, I believe, as you say it in that order, not Texas Optic. It is Optic Texas, I believe, going up against the other Los Angeles. So Los Angeles Thieves will be the ones that are going to play against Toronto, and Los Angeles Gorillas are going to be playing against Optic. So I think a lot of people know Optic and FaZe out of Call of Duty, even if they don't follow. So knowing that both of those teams are in the Call of Duty League finals in the World Championship, go ahead, take a look, peep it out. We got Optic and FaZe. I mean, you could run that all the way back to, I think, like 2011, maybe all the way back to 2009 for one of those teams. So they've been around a long time. They have some championships under their belts. Speaking of championships, actually, Atlanta FaZe, 2 of their players have 2 Call of Duty championships. They have 2 other players on the team as well. Each of them has a single world championship to their name. So that is a stacked team. That is a really, really tough team to be going up against. But some of them are going to try to take them down. Toronto Ultra have Envoy, who is a world champion as well. Optic Texas, 2 world champions in Shotzi and Kennedy. I think a lot of people know Shotzi, even if maybe they don't quite follow Call of Duty Esports as closely. It's a more popular player. May have heard his name. New York Sublimers, 3 of their players have won a championship. That is Hydra, their French import player. We've got Kismet as well, and we also have Skies. Sib is going to be trying to get his first championship here in this tournament. Seattle Surge have a single championship player, which is Hook, however he pronounces it, not quite sure. Huke. You know who I'm talking about. I think a lot of people here know who I'm talking about, especially if you follow Call of Duty. Los Angeles Guerrillas, Los Angeles Thieves, Miami Heretics. Those players do not have any champions to their name. Miami Heretics, in fact, an entire Spanish roster, so actually repping Europe. That entire team. Los Angeles Thieves do have a British player in Nasty, which is fantastic. Seattle Surge, they have a Belgian and a French player as well. So there's some European representation, but to see an entirely European roster in Call of Duty it's pretty cool that there's an age in which we're seeing other regions, maybe not dominate, but they're here in the top 8. They're going to be competing for the championship. So that's a really cool thing to see in the evolution of Call of Duty. Keep your eyes on it. That is coming up starting on July 18th. And I believe the first game there is going to be, that's going to be the New York Sublimers and the Seattle Surge. So that'll be very cool. Seattle Surge almost sounds like a D-League basketball team to me. They definitely nailed it with their naming. They sound like a sports team for sure. They sound like a pro sports team, so they nailed it on that one. League of Legends. I think everybody knows by now that there are like a million League of Legends leagues at this point. So what we're going to be covering here is we're going to cover just a few of it, just what you would call the big 4. There's 4 that you would like call the S tier. These are where championships teams come out of, and that would be the LCK in Korea, the LCS in North America, the LPL in China, and the LEC in Europe. So today, what we're going to be covering, the LCS, that is the North American. Right now, what we're looking at for this summer split, Cloud9 and Team Liquid are both 3-0. Two teams that are, just historically fantastic in esports all around, and LCS as well. They've been around for a long time in League of Legends. Cloud9 and Team Liquid 3-0 right now. We'll have to see if anybody can take it to them. FlyQuest, the only 2-1 team right now. FlyQuest has been on the bottom of standings, and they've been toward the top of standings as well. They've had an up and down history, but right now they're the only team that's managed to be 2-1. Then we have 4 teams right now that are 1-2, that being Dignitas, NRG, 100 Thieves, and Immortals. The only team that is yet to get a win in LCS Summer 2024 is Shopify Rebellion. Hopefully they will pick something up along the way. We'll have to see who they could take it from. I think Immortals is probably their best shot, but a lot of these teams have been around in League of Legends for a long time. Shopify Rebellion, they're a rebranded team. They're a team that's been putting stuff together for the last couple of years. They're definitely making their way up, but they seem to be at the entry level of every high league that they participate in. So we'll see if the LCS, if they can pick up a win somewhere along the way. It would be nice to see. LCK, moving over to Korea. This is a region where countless champions have been made. A lot of championship games in the World Championship have been between LCK teams. Gen.G, 8-0. There's only 10 teams, people. They're 8-0. They have not been defeated by anybody. Let's see, do they their remaining game here, if I take a look at what's still left, their remaining game is against, it looks like against Nongshim Red Force. Interesting. That is a 2-6 team. Gen.G not expected to lose that one. They may finish this one up 9-0. So Gen.G at the top. Now there are 2 6-2 teams, that being Hanwha Life Esports and D+. They're both vying for that second place position with one game left to play each. In 5-3, you've got Freaks and T1. At 4-4, you have KT Rolster. And that's about, and then we'll throw in that DRX are 2-6, but that 4-4 KT Rolster, that's where you end with the notable teams that are probably actually going somewhere here at the end of this LCK Summer 2024. DRX there at 2-6, tied with Nongshim Red Force and Fear X as well. Unfortunately for Brian, they are 0-8, not 8-0. That's Gen.G. Brian are 0-8. That is very unfortunate for the team. They will not be moving on anywhere. But a good effort from them. We'll see who takes those positions. Those bottom 3 positions are definitely contestable. I think there's a lot of teams that want to fight for that spot in the LCK. So we'll see if maybe a team challenges for those positions. We'll have to see what happens. Then we've got over in China, there are two groups, and we're going to go down where they are right now. LNG is the only undefeated team at 3-0, but they haven't played their fourth game yet. Unlike JD Gaming and Anyone's Legend, who are 3-1, they are in second and third place right now. They've played 4 games. Billy Gaming, 2-0. Sorry, they are also undefeated, so there is still an undefeated team, but only 2-0 right now. Billy, very, very strong team, so could see them go undefeated a bit longer, depending on what teams they go up against. 2-1, Weibo Gaming. Then at 0-2, we've got both Top Esports and Fun Plus Phoenix. At 0-3, we have LGD Gaming and Ninjas in Pajamas. Down in the Nirvana group, that was the Ascend group that we just went through. Down in the Nirvana group, Oh My God at 3-0, Team WE at 2-0, Rare Adam and Thunder Talk Gaming both at 2-1. Edward Gaming at 1-2. Very interesting. Edward Gaming usually has a pretty strong foothold in every esport they compete in China. So very interesting to see that they're 1-2 right now. Gonna have to see what they can do against some of these other teams. Maybe they'll come up against some lower ranked teams and get themselves back in a position that looks more like their usual form. Ultra Prime with them at 1-2 right now. Invictus at 1-3. And Royal Never Give Up, upsettingly, at 0-3. That is a team that I think a lot of people have backed in the past coming out of China. Very, very popular team within that region, and very popular team from the outside as well, which China is such a big region that usually they have their own fan base for themselves. They don't need anyone else to support. But I think Royal Never Give Up is one of those teams that's had support from the entire community before. So very upsetting to see them at 0-3, but right now, not looking great for them. League of Legends, huge esport across the world. I think many people want to know the rundown for that because they're always going to have their eyes on it. But that's all we have for this week. We're going to close it out with that League of Legends there. And thank you, TJ, for helping me out here. Thank you, Stefan, for the interview. We always appreciate your time, and we'll hope to talk to you again after the World Championship to get a rundown. We will see you next Monday, and we'll let you know how everything went at this upcoming weekend's events, including EVO. So we will see you here again next week. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you check out the social medias, links below, including Stefan's social medias there. We'll have those linked as well. Make sure to go give him a follow and give him some love. Really appreciate his time. So we will see you next Monday after the weekend.